Good. I had a little bit of dental surgery yesterday afternoon, so if my speech is not as clear as I would like it to be, please forgive me. But welcome, everyone. This is a meeting for everyone to have an opportunity to learn about the airport master plan upgrade process that is taking place for Brunswick Executive Airport. My name is Barry Valentine. I'm a resident of Brunswick. I live on Brunswick Landing, and I'm also a member of the Board of Trustees of the Mid-Coast Regional Redevelopment Authority. And I've been asked tonight to facilitate the meeting because of my, if I may say so modestly, it's fairly extensive background in aviation and in airports. I am the former Director of Aeronautics for the state of Maine, and in that capacity had the opportunity to work with 36 airport communities in Maine on the master planning process. I'm also the former director of the Portland International Jetport, and in that capacity obviously was involved in master planning. And I'm a former senior official with the Federal Aviation Administration in Washington, and had opportunity to address numerous airport-related issues in that capacity as well. So I'm pleased to have the opportunity to be here tonight to facilitate this process. I would ask that when we get to the end, to the question and comment period, that if you have a question and/or a comment, that you please limit it to 3 minutes. Given the number of people here tonight, want to be certain that everybody has an opportunity to say or offer whatever they have to say or offer. Any questions you have, we will take down, and those questions will be answered as soon as possible, and those answers will be placed on both the Mara website and on the Town of Brunswick website. So again, any questions that you may bring up tonight, we will provide the answers to those questions, and we'll do so in a very timely fashion. We have, I should note that there is an agenda in the back room if you don't have one already, and some other documents as well. The 3 parts of the program we've set up tonight are first, a briefing on the historical background of both the landing itself and on Brunswick Executive Airport by Mr. Steve Levesque. Many of you know Steve. I think he's somewhat of a household word here in the area. And he probably knows more about the history of this facility than any living person. Secondly, a presentation on the Customs and Border Facility proposal by Jim Dahl, who is the airport manager. And then lastly, a master plan update from Garul, from Dubois and King. They are our contractors undertaking the airport master plan. And then finally, at the end, a period for questions and comments. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Steve Levesque. Steve, take it away.
Good evening, everybody. It's my pleasure to be back here talking about the airport. And just, you know, Brunswick has quite an aviation history. Brunswick was the site of the first municipal airfield in the state, and it used to be at the golf course. And once the Navy took the airport property now at Brunswick Executive Airport during World War II as a military training facility, and they had closed that right after World War II. It became a university campus and a municipal airport for a while until the Cold War hit, and then once again became a Navy facility. Just a little story: when they acquired the Brunswick facility, the Navy did, for creating the airport, they also acquired a couple of ancillary training fields. One of them was in Trenton, which is now the Bar Harbor Airport, and the other one was in Auburn, and that became the Lewiston Auburn Airport. When the Navy acquired that, that was my grandfather's farm. So I've been involved with BRAC for a long time. Quite a history, quite an aviation history in Brunswick, and When I was hired back in 2006, after they announced that Brunswick Naval Air Station was going to close, I was hired to really lead the planning authority to do the reuse master plan. That's the first thing that was required for when they close a facility. And we built quite an extensive and robust process that lasted about 18 months. We did bus to base tours. We did visioning sessions. I'll tell you about that in a moment. We did visioning sessions. We had topical seminars in the old high school. Now, some of you, how many people attended some of those? That's great. That's great. That was quite an experience to go through. We had over 1,800 people contacts during that process. And the most interesting part of that is we had visioning sessions where we were all in the rooms. You remember that, where we had the maps up and people were saying, this is what we'd like the former base to look like. We did it for the general public and people in the region. We did it for the employees, people who were employed at the base. Then we also did it with high school students from the 3 area high schools, Morris, Brunswick, and Mount Ararat. And we were a little nervous about that last part because we didn't know what we were going to get as far as the vision. And we thought, okay, maybe we'll see skateboard parks and arcades, and it was anything but. These kids really set the foundation for the reuse plan because it was all about innovation. It was all about quality jobs for their community and recovery. It was about alternative energy. They really surprised, and those of you who were there, they made a great presentation to the public on their plan, and we used that as the foundation for the reuse plan. We also went back to them after the reuse plan was adopted to actually name the facility, and they're the ones who came up with Brunswick Landing Main Center for Innovation. So Mira has been for the last 20 years now trying to realize the dream of these young people, and many of them live in the area and work in businesses on Mira and on the Brunswick Landing. As we were going through the reuse planning process, there are a number of alternatives. We did surveys of the community. We were doing a feasibility study as to whether or not there would be an airport on the property and what that would look like, so that when we had the information to determine whether or not we'd have an airport or not. Some base redevelopments keep their airports, some don't. But it was voted on by the public that they wanted to keep the airport. And in the surveys that were done, over 84% wanted to see an airport maintained, and an executive airport focusing on activity. So we looked at the feasibility of what kind of uses would be appropriate for the airport. We looked at air cargo, for example. We had a large facility, and that was ruled out very early on for a couple of reasons. Number one, there's really no market in Maine for a large air cargo operation. They really need to be in a central part where there's a large population for further distribution. Second part, we just didn't feel that it was compatible with the community. That we didn't want 20 747s taking off 3 o'clock in the morning from Brunswick. So that was ruled out very early on. We also looked at schedule passenger airport. We looked at that. We ruled that out for a number of reasons. One being that we had Portland right down the street where significant investments were being made for passenger aircraft, and it just wasn't appropriate for the community. So that was ruled out. So we came with, the other markets were really focusing on general aviation, which we have, maintenance, repair, and overhaul, because we have the large hangars of large aircraft, and you can see operations going on there now. We had flight training and education, and UMA has a big flight training school, but we also have New England Aeronautical Academy that also has flight training. So we're training the future pilots. UMA is also training aircraft technicians and mechanics. They have a drone operations school, and they would like to also do an air traffic control school using the former tower. So so education was a key element, and that was a key element, obviously, in the reuse master plan. And lastly, it was really aerospace aerospace R&D. It was really that Brunswick could become a platform for the future aerospace and aviation. You're going to hear a little more about that when our consultants give an opportunity for the update. So that's where we are. We've done a lot of improvements with the airport, converting it from civilian to from military to civilian uses. The FAA and the state has contributed almost $50 million to revitalizing that airport. We have on the back table is a excerpt from the state's newly published airport systems plan, and the airport has become a significant economic driver for Brunswick. They estimated, McFarland Johnson did the study, that Brunswick Executive Airport has an annual economic impact of about $22 million a year, which is number one of all the general aviation airports in the state of Maine. And it's also the newest airport, only being in existence for 14 years. So we should all be very proud of that. The other piece that's very important is very few general aviation airports are financially sustainable. They have to be supported by the community. I'm pleased to say that our airport is in the black and operates in the black. And it doesn't depend on revenues from the town. It doesn't even depend on the excise tax from the aircraft that the town collects, which the legislature established to really help support municipal airports. So we're operating in the black, and we're really a significant economic driver for the community and the state of Maine. And there's a little report on the back table for that. I want to give you a little bit, just a sense, and talk a little bit about where we are on environmental sustainability and why that's a core kind of principle and stewardship of not only our reuse plan, but of the airport operations. And then I also want to give you an update on where we are in addressing the AFFF PFAS systems that we inherited in the hangars from the Navy. But before I do that, I want to recognize Marty McMahon. Marty, you're right there. Marty was our first airport manager. He came over from the Navy, and he really worked hand in hand with myself and Jeff Jordan in creating that airport. And Marty did a terrific job, and now he represents the Navy and on the caretaker of the property. So he has a great deal of experience on the property and helping us create what we think is really something special. And I just went to a conference 2 weeks ago in D.C., Association of Defense Communities, where once again Brunswick is being recognized as one of the most successful redevelopment efforts in the country. So, and that doesn't happen by itself. There's a lot of people. We have great municipal support, a partnership with our municipal partners. We have great support from the state and the federal agencies, and it takes really all of that to make it successful. But a little bit about stewardship, and environmental stewardship and sustainability, because that's built into our reuse master plan. If you look at the core principles there, what the people who are part of that process really wanted to focus on, that was a core principle. And there's a number of elements that really we look at in kind of implementing that, a number of plans and permits and deeds and guidance documents. So after we did the reuse master plan, there was the federal agency, the Department of the Navy, did an environmental impact statement on the reuse master plan. And that was quite a process. It took about another 18 months to get through that process. We developed and wrote a natural resources management plan on how we're going to deal with natural resources on the property and how we're going to manage stormwater and all those other issues. And things like how we have some threatened and endangered bird habitats on the property, grasshopper, sparrow. We have the upland salmon sandpiper. We have the snowy owls like to come in every once in a while with big open spaces, and obviously we can't have them around aircraft, so we work with the USDA on actually removing them and relocating them to a more suitable habitat for those folks. Obviously, the Executive Airport master plan that was developed before we could take the property, that builds those principles from the reuse plan. We also have a multi-sector general permit and associated stormwater pollution prevention plan that's approved by DEP on how we're going to deal with that. We last updated that in 2021, and now we're updating that again as a result of the release that we had in last August. We have design guidelines for the property. And then we have all the various conveyance documents that come from the Navy with associated deeds, and they all have various land use restrictions depending upon what property they have, what kind of uses can go on that property. And various controls. We also have what's called the Uniform Environmental Covenant Agreements on some property as applicable. Typically, we had those when a property was a CERCLA, that's a kind of where there was some hazardous substances there where the Navy remediated before they could transfer it. We had UECA agreements on that, and now it looks like because PFAS is declared as a CERCLA constituent and it's in the groundwater and soils, that all future transfers will have those UECA agreements, which is fine, and we're happy to work with DEP on managing those. We also have the Town of Brunswick zoning ordinance that works in concert with those, and its comprehensive plan, and then any other applicable state, federal regulatory permits and directives. So they all work together and work together and try to manage those. In addition to those things, obviously we work with our partners at the Navy, with the Town of Brunswick, with the EPA and DEP on monitoring the ongoing environmental remediation and remedial investigation activities that are going on the property. They're always evolving. The Navy base had 21 CERCLA sites, part of a Superfund site because of the 70 years that the Navy operated the facility. So we're always evolving. The PFAS evolved. I mean, when we first received property transfers back in 2010 and 2011. PFAS wasn't even it wasn't in the documents. It wasn't an issue. It started becoming an evolving issue over time. And we started working with the regulators, and we back in 2018 and 2019, when the state stood up the PFAS task force, state PFAS task force, we were involved with that process, and we said, hey, we have it here at Brunswick Landing, we have it in the hangars. What kind of guidance can you give us? Because this stuff is evolving, and we want to make sure that we're trying to stay on top of it and trying to figure out strategies to remediate it. We also approached the town and the DEP back in 2021 about trying to develop a stormwater management plan for the Brunswick Landing campus to kind of look at how we can modernize the system that was designed by the Navy, which was really designed as a way to deal with spills and manage those in the systems as they went by. So that never occurred. That never happened. Mayor is still very interested in engaging that process because we think it's very important. And I know there's been some work done on Mere Brook, which is an urban impaired stream from the historical uses from the town. How do we merge those efforts together and go forward? I think that's very important. We also work with the Navy and DEP and EPA. The Navy conducts an annual survey of every property owner at Brunswick Landing to really look at what the land use controls, and are they in compliance with their land use controls. If you disturb any soil on your property that you own, you have to get concurrence from the Navy before you can move forward with that. So the Navy does that survey. Mira itself has 72 parcels that we report on, of transfer parcels that we own. So there's quite a process, and Marty kind of leads that effort for the Navy. So that kind of gives you an overview of what we're trying to do to kind of bring all this together to realize kind of the vision of the reuse plan. And dealing with BRAC is a complex, cumbersome process. The concern of many people in the country is, under the new administration, what's going to happen with funding to support BRAC communities going forward, so the Navy can continue with their remediation activities. What's going to happen with the regulatory structures regarding water and some of the other issues that we're dealing with, and will there be BRACs in the future, or will the Department of Defense just yank away the properties and leave the communities and the states in the lurch? So that's kind of where we are on environmental stewardship. The last thing I want to chat about a little bit is to give you folks an update on where we are on the AFFF systems. Keep in mind that this is an issue we've been kind of working on, we've been dealing with, and throughout when I was there, we were talking with the Navy and the EPA, and what kind of guidance can you give us? What can you provide? And we talked to the FAA, and they still can't. The EPA still can't give us any guidance on how to best manage PFAS on properties once you remove it. But anyway, we're focusing on this. Obviously, the community is very concerned about this, and we are too. It's a big issue. No one wants to be a pollutant, we want to make sure that. So our goal is to get rid of the stuff in the hangars. And we have a 4-point plan to do that. And we were able to work with the town, and we were able to bring in pool associates which we had been talking with about doing a risk assessment in the hangars, looking at our tenant base, looking at type of work they do, and what can we do about the ability to shut down those AFFF systems so that we can start removing the potential contaminants from those properties. So 4-point number 1 is to shut down the systems. They found that we can do that. We can shut down those systems, and we started that process. So that's number 1. So Hangar 6, those systems were shut down last month. And we're removing the concentrate, so there will be no concentrate. That was about almost 900 gallons of removal of that. So that's the first piece, is shut down the systems. Hangar 4, obviously, we shut down that system. There's no AFFF PFAS in that building at all. The Navy went in and cleansed it and rinsed it because they own the property. Hangar 5 is a portion of it, about 40% of it. 40% of it is already shut down, so we're working on a plan to remove the rest of it. Hangar 7 was never really activated, and we're in the process of removing the PFAS that's in drums and that's in a holding tank there, in a bladder tank. So we're in the process of doing that with those hangars. So we're moving forward on shutting down the AFFF systems. So Hangar 6, it's shut down. Concentrate is removed. That's the second piece, is removing the AFFF. The third element is we need now to go in and rinse and clean the residual PFAS that's in the suppression systems. And that's a process that you have to go through. The Navy did it in Hangar 4. We need to do it in the other hangars. We estimate it's going to cost us about $1.2 million, and we're working on trying to find funding solutions for that piece. So that's very important, and we're moving forward with that. And then the fourth piece is really ongoing monitoring and testing. What we're learning, though, is even once you cleanse the pipes and cleanse the systems, that you'll end up with what they call rebound. Apparently, the PFAS can get into if you have rust in your lines, if you have in the fittings and things like that, you'll have some residual that will seep out. We're going to monitor that on a regular basis, and that's part of our stormwater pollution prevention plan. So we'll be monitoring those things. The bottom line is we're making good progress with our plan. We're shutting down the systems. We're removing the PFAS from the property, and also the commitment, and we'll talk about that a little later, is that we will not have any AFFF systems on campus any longer. So a new tenant comes in to use a hangar, or another hangar is being built, they'll have to use alternative technologies for fire suppression. This is also facilitated by some changes in the fire codes. We weren't able to do that because the town and the state fire marshal were working off the former national fire codes. But as a result of Pool's work, they said, no, you can apply the new fire codes, which the town hadn't adopted yet, or the state hadn't. You can apply those principles, which now allows us to shut down those systems with some modifications that we had to make to the hangars, like bringing in some portable fire extinguishers, large ones, and things like that, non-foam based, to apply, and how we manage the systems, and how we train the tenants on how their operations are, the amount of fuel that they can keep in an aircraft, and those types of things. So it's an ongoing process, but I'm really pleased to say that we're making good, sound progress on that, and we hope that within a very short amount of time, within a few months, all the PFAS, AFFF, and Brunswick Landing will be gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next, I'd like to ask Jim Knoll, the airport manager, if he'd do his presentation.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to touch quickly on some of the stats for the Brunswick Airport and our plans for the customs facility that we're right now in the design process. Last year, 2024, Brunswick had 23,690 operations. An operation at an airport consists of a takeoff and a landing. So a takeoff is one operation, a landing is also an operation. A little over 50 of those are medical flights in one way or another, either from Life Flight of Maine, PALS, Angel Flights, which are carriers that help people get to appointments in different areas free of charge, and other air ambulance operators. As Steve had touched on, the economic impact for Brunswick is about $20 million annually, and that jumps up to about $40 million on air show years. The air show brings in about $20 million on its own as far as overall economic impact to the Mid-Coast area. Job creations at the airport, right now we're roughly 70 to 75 direct jobs at the airport, created by the airport, and close to 150 direct and indirect, which include, staff and other things for companies. Currently, we have about 77 aircraft based at the field. Most of those do stay in Hangar 7 and Hangar 5. The majority, there are a few that tie down outside on the ramp. As Steve said, we have 2 flight schools that operate out of the Brunswick Airport. UMA has been a great partner with the Brunswick Airport, from the drone school to the aircraft technician school, and looking forward to the air traffic control school. Another thing about Brunswick, the classification for Brunswick, we're a general aviation airport. Commercial passenger cargo airports that operate in that capacity operate under 14 CFR 139 which sets out the regulations of the facilities they have to have, the other requirements as far as fire stations and TSA and all those things that come with that. Brunswick is not that. We're a general aviation airport. We're not looking to be a 139 airport. We're not trying to be one at all. We're sticking with the general aviation classification. So essentially what that means is that we, as Steve said, we will never have commercial passenger cargo operations at Brunswick. To touch a little on the customs facility that we're proposing, we did receive a CDS grant to do a feasibility study and design work for a customs facility at Brunswick. This customs facility would be a user fee-based customs facility. To be a direct port of entry has a whole nother list of requirements, and that would be a facility that would be completely sustained and funded by Customs and Border Patrol. That's not what we have. We have a small general aviation facility that's a user-based, so that means any aircraft that come in that require customs, they have to pay a fee to use the customs at our facility, which in turn pays for having a Customs and Border Patrol agent at the airport. The facility that we're looking at is probably 3,000 to 5,000 square foot facility, about the size of this room, a little bigger than this room, probably. And it's designed to process 10 to 15 passengers at a time. The average number of people coming in on aircraft at the airport is 5 to 7 people. So it's not in any way going to be designed to handle cargo, passengers, large commercial passenger operations. Some of the other things that we had, Steve touched on a little bit, which we do like. We are the #1 general aviation airport in the state as far as economic output, and that's everything from rental cars to hotels to restaurants to shopping to all those things in the Mid-Coast area. We have nearly 8.5, 9 million in direct income, which would be from hangar rents, fuel sales, leases, those kind of things, user fees, and that at the airport. I know there has been some questions to the customs facility of why we want or need one. Several of our normal tenants travel internationally quite often. They're able to leave from Brunswick, but they can't return to Brunswick. They have to make an extra stop to come back. We've had requests from Bowdoin to General Dynamics to Bath Iron Works, all the businesses and schools and things in the area that regularly do these things. And so we did a feasibility study to check it out and see if it made any sense. And coming back in the study was that based on the operations that we do now and the people that we have missed that would use that facility if it was there, it's a feasible thing to do. It's looked pretty good. So that's where we're at with the customs. I don't know. I don't have anything with my phone number here, but you can feel free to reach out through the Mirror website or not. I'd be happy to answer any other questions anybody has. And as Barry said, you can send any to the email for at the end of the slide presentation, and we'll post responses there too. So.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, and next we'll go to the master plan update with Mr. Rule. And I should mention, I didn't say earlier, I and several other people serve on a technical advisory committee to Dubois and King, so that there is citizen input and local expertise input to this process, as well as the Dubois and King people doing the work that they do.
Great.
Thank you, Guy.
Thank you, Barry. I'm going to try to put the slides up on the screen here in just a second. And there we go. Very well. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Guy Ruel from Dubois and King, and I also have the slides here. So if I'm looking down a lot, it's just I don't want to be rude and keep looking backwards. So, yes, Dubois and King was asked to start to work on the master plan at Brunswick. I can say that I live here in Maine. I've been working with Brunswick for the past 5 years. I'm very familiar with Brunswick. Some of the things just to spotlight before I start talking about the master plan, which is very interesting to me. I've been doing this in aviation for 40 years. It's not very common for airports to say two things in one breath, and that is they're the number one economic driver as a general aviation airport. That's very uncommon in a state. And also, number two, that they're in the budgetary black. Most of the time, airports are in the red, whether barely in the red or deeply in the red, and that they're not strong economic drivers. So I think that's important to know, and which actually makes our job even easier, because now we're able to really focus on what I like to talk about and the FAA has started to talk about, and that's what I'm going to really focus on tonight and in the master plan, and that's called right sizing. It's so important to understand that the airport is not looking to expand, to grow. And it's hypercritical to understand that they're really looking to dial in and hyper-focus and look at how can we right-size the assets that we currently have, and that's what I want to focus on tonight. Hopefully I can go to the next slide. My agenda, here we go, is I want to talk about the master planning team. Steve kind of really, he's like the master of the history because he's been here for so long, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the history, just a short slide about that. I will briefly talk a little bit about, we've talked about $50 million. What did that get for the airport? I want to outline some of the projects that $50 million did get for the airport. We'll briefly talk about that. I'm also going to then dive into a little bit of, what is at Brunswick Landing now, and also the airport, what types of businesses are operating at the airport. We'll talk about that briefly. Then I'll get into basically the master planning process. I want folks to understand the process. I can tell you we're about 50 to 60% of the way through the process. We're at a very important part of the process that the FAA is kind of pump the brakes on. And when I say that, there are only two parts of a master plan that the FAA truly approves, and that is a forecast and an airport layout plan. And we'll talk about that in depth here in a minute. We want to talk and focus also on some guiding principles. I can tell you when Brunswick asked us to do the master plan, it was very important to them to put together what we call guiding principles, so that every time we come forward with some good ideas and some neutral ideas and sometimes some crazy ideas that we bring from other airports, because we work with a lot of other airports, we want to be able to ground ourselves and say, are these part of the guiding principles? So we have set some guiding principles that the technical advisory committee has vetted, and every time we bring an idea forward, we say, is this in line with these principles? So we're going to put those up on the screen so folks can see these as well, and then we're going to talk about the progress, next steps, and then we'll hand it back over to Barry for questions. There we go. The team itself, it really is broken into four parts. It's really the FAA. The FAA is funding this project at 95% of the project cost. A lot of folks would say, wow, depending on how much money the thing is, 95%, where does that money come from? The Airway Trust Fund Act. And if you bought an airline ticket, if you have gone on to Amazon and asked for something to be delivered to your doorstep, more than likely it's been brought air delivered, most likely, in some form or fashion. You have in some way or form form, or fashion have paid for a portion of this master plan. 95% of those funds. A lot of folks say, that's part of my money. Well, it's an airline ticket. That money goes into the Airway Trust Fund, cargo funds, all of that money, airline fuel tax revenue, all of that goes into this Airway Trust Fund, and it funds this 95%. The FAA is a part of that. That 95% fund is there, and that's where that 95% comes from. Maine DOT is part of this. They fund 5% of the project. The state of Maine collects fuel tax revenue as well. For every bit of fuel that's sold across the 32 airports in Maine, that fuel tax revenue is collected. They put it in a pot of money, and then they throw in 5% as a share for any project across the state of Maine on non-primary airports such as Brunswick. So that's another share. Of course, we have the public as well. We're here tonight to talk about this. The Technical Advisory Committee was hand-selected. They are members of the community. They're members of the airport. They're members, business members. So we really tried to pull the committee together. Anybody's invited, really. We've had some pretty good groups come in, and we've had some really good input to date. We've had 3 meetings so far. Happy to have more. We're always interested, and it's important. And then, of course, Du Bois and King, which is our group. You know, briefly put, again, Steve articulated the history far better than I could, but, 1930s, the airport was brought in, 1940s, the 50s, of course, and then up into the 2000s when the BRAC closure had happened. This is kind of the general overall history. More important, though, is after the BRAC closure, and then there was the reuse, there was a lot of work had to happen at the airport. It was a naval base. It needed to be transformed into and reused and put back into FAA standards. I can tell you there's a lot of things still at that airport that aren't necessarily FAA standard, and it's a constant process to bring them up to FAA standards. I'm not going to read every one of these projects, and this in no way, form, or fashion lists every single project that the team at Brunswick has worked on, but these are the general federal and state projects. Brunswick and Mira have done many other projects that are not listed here, and even Jim had listed an additional one, such as a CDS grant, which stands for Congressionally Directed Spending, where Senator Collins or Senator King or Jared Golden was able to bring some additional funding to the airfield to make sure that they could continue to move forward projects. Those are types of things that happen, and they were able to leverage those types of funding. Some things at the airport that, some businesses, some activities that are going on, of course. Flight Level Aviation is an FBO that's at the airfield. They are a business that sells fuel. They do line service. They do catering. They take care of, the local based aircraft, any transient aircraft that fly in, the businesses. There are a lot of people that fly into the Brunswick area. As you heard the words direct jobs, you heard indirect economic impact. There's also things called induced and indirect. People come into town, they rent cars, they buy food, they go to hotels. These are all things that are the throughput, really, and the first person at the door for them really is Flight Level Aviation. Some other things that are going on, of course, is with that, people say, hey, I really like this, so they start saying, I want to base my aircraft at the airfield. They'll start bringing the aircraft in. They'll start buying fuel, more excise tax that the town will charge, and then they would like to build a hangar to put their investment out of the elements and into a hangar. So those are important. That does increase operations, and with increased operations, of course, come other things. The Maine Space Corporation, they do have other facilities like R&D. They are based at the airfield. They're doing analytics and other things of that fashion in manufacturing. These are happening at the airfield, as well as the college is doing things like unmanned aeronautical systems. R&D of that sort is going on at the airfield as well. So there's a lot of activity that goes on. And, of course, along with that is 3 flight schools. There's a huge pilot shortage right now. There's a huge shortage of pilot mechanics in the world of aviation. So Brunswick is contributing to these shortfalls across the United States. So let's talk about the master plan. There's really, 7 parts to a master plan, and I'll just bring you up to speed quickly to where we are. And just so you know, on the Mira website are the first 2 components of this master plan. We've written an introduction. Now, what is an introduction? It talks about everything that Marty's done and Steve have done over the years with the airport. It gives a background, everything the reuse plan had done, and it brings you up to speed to current day. And then we got into what are the existing conditions on the airfield, and it kind of brings it up to current day, and what are the standards that we're using, and there's just a bunch of great information. It sets the stage for what the FAA is going to, the next chapter in the document, which is a forecast. It's one of 2 things that the FAA approves, and I just want to pause there. There's 3 types of forecasts that the FAA approves. There is what this one is, a general aviation forecast. Then there's a commercial service forecast, and there's a cargo forecast. I've written 3 types of forecasts in my day. I've only been doing this 40 years. This airport is not looking to do a commercial service forecast. They're not looking to do a cargo forecast. They're just not looking to do that. This is a general aviation forecast. We wrote the forecast, so just so everybody knows that in the next 20 years and beyond, the airport will not be a commercial service airport with scheduled air service. I just want to make that abundantly clear. I wrote it, and I had to battle with the FAA 3 times to a point where they finally accepted, and I believe they'll approve, a general aviation forecast. So what you're seeing at the airfield now is what you'll most likely see 20 years from now. It might be an increase in operations, and I'm going to show you what that increase we suspect it'll be. It's very moderate. Not high, it's very moderate, but it is a general aviation forecast. So please understand, it's not commercial service and it's not cargo. The FAA has no tolerance at all right now for another commercial service airport in the region. They just don't have the tolerance for it right now in the stomach. So we've submitted the forecast. We'll talk about that in a minute. We are currently working on facility needs. In fact, we had a technical advisory committee meeting today, and we'll list some of those facility needs that we found are pseudo shortfalls. And we also found in the facility needs where, frankly, the airport could actually shrink in size. Not only its footprint, the actual perimeter of the airfield, how they could release some of that. And I believe, we brought it to the TAC today, and I think they agree with that. And I think they also believe that, that a lot of the pavement on the airfield, and I'll give an example, that one of the runways could even, because there are 2 runways there, for those of you that, and I'll show a picture here in a minute, where one of the alternatives would be to reduce one of the runways by as much as 85% of the pavement. So they are truly looking to not only reduce the footprint and also reduce the amount of impervious surface, the amount of pavement, so that the environmental footprint is less. So we will talk about that in a minute. Once the facility needs are done, those alternatives will go into drawings, and we will put that into a document, and we'll present that. The drawings are what the FAA calls the airport layout plan. Now, I can tell you, the FAA will not approve an airport layout plan that's not supported by the forecast. So it's another check and balance. If we were to put forward an airport layout plan that is a cargo airport layout plan, by way of example, and the forecast is only for general aviation, the FAA is going to say, we're not supporting it, we're not approving it. So I'm just checks and balances. There's a lot of those. So the airport layout plan is a general aviation airport layout plan, and is what would be put forward. Finally, is a financial document. We call it a capital improvement plan. The FAA calls it a financial implementation plan. It's really a 1-year, 2-year is really what they're focusing on. But it does do a 5-year. Some folks will call it a capital improvement plan, CIP. And then it'll show a 5-year to 10-year, what we call the out years. And it's, some projected projects that'll come from the master plan itself. Here's our guiding principles and I do apologize. I missed this, by the way. There is a guiding principle that was enhanced in this, and this is in light of, and I'll talk about it in a second, but and I'm not going to read all of these specifically to you, but I will tell you that these guiding principles are all about environmental. It's all about enhancing. Actually, maybe I will read them real quick. Apologies. It won't take me long at all. Number one is considering environmentally stable solutions for the current and future needs of the airport. Clean energy opportunities. I can tell you we are looking at clean energy, solar. The airport has done a significantly good job with bringing in more solar. But we're also looking at water reuse for hangars so that the water isn't just back into the ground. Maybe that can be used for washing vehicles or things like that. We're also the development of alternatives to align with the town and the airport's future use and current use. We want to make sure everything's in alignment, so there's symbiotic alignment. Develop alternatives that designate the best use of the current airport owned parcels. We have found parcels that now that the airport has really reused and really focused in, there's parcels that we frankly feel could be released. And so the parcels are excess, and we're going to outline those in the airport layout plan and tell the FAA we think these parcels could be released. So that's something, and that's a guiding principle, and in fact we think it's possible. The development of a sustainable implementation plan and funding sources, and a follow-on to that is the development of a plan that means, and this is a follow-on to what Steve was saying, zero AFF, aqueous foam forming foam, no foam on the airfield, which also includes, and as the airport develops hangars on the airfield, zero PFAS developing foam systems on the airfield moving forward, zero. And the airport has that ability. A builder comes forward and says, I want to build a hangar, and I just want you guys to know this. NFPA 409, National Fire Protection Agency 409, says that when you get above a certain fire area, you need to have some form of fire protection. The airport reserves the right to say, okay, but we're not allowing PFAS or any type of system that will create an environmental issue. So there will be some form of alternative that is non-PFAS or AFFF, period. That's just the standard and the guideline moving forward. So when we develop alternatives, which we'll talk about in a minute for new hangars, that will be a guiding principle, and I apologize. I will take responsibility for it. I didn't get it into the guiding principle, but it is one, and you will see it in the master plan. Okay. Last couple here, the efficient timeline for the airport's future. Create an efficient timeline. When I say that, I mean, you can't just do pie in the sky and not have a funding plan that will support it. I mean, everybody would love a beautiful whatever it is, but if you can't ever fund it, then it's not realistic. So that's the guiding principle. And then develop alternatives that will advance the airport as an economic driver. I think we've heard tonight, again, the airport is a strong economic driver. Number one economic general aviation driver for the state of Maine. 32 airports, by the way, in the state of Maine. Number one driver, and we want to sustain that. So I think it's important that the alternatives that come forward do not degrade that, and that the path and the momentum is continued and sustained. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, gain approval from the FAA for both the forecast and the airport layout plan. Here's the existing airport, and I just want to point out a couple of things. I think there's a laser pointer here, I think. Does that work? Yeah. I'm sorry about that. So just so everybody knows, here is the terminal building at the airport. Here's a new hangar that was built. This very dark dashed line is kind of the current footprint, although this is oddly what the Navy says right now, but technically there's a line here, so kind of disregard this little boot-looking thing. And then it kind of goes around here. I can tell you, and I'm not going to do it here, but there are some parcels that frankly can be dialed in and can be released. It shrinks the size and footprint of the airport, not necessarily needed. There are two runways here. This particular runway, right now, the FAA doesn't fund, will never fund. They've said it and made it abundantly clear, we're never going to fund that runway. Mira can't, and well, I shouldn't say can't. Mira has made the decision that they do not want to fund 2 runways. And frankly, this is 8,000 feet by 200 feet wide. So one of the alternatives is to simply, in working with the State University of Maine and their in support of the education, would be to just simply shrink this runway by 85%, reducing the amount of pavement, and to make it shorter and to narrow it significantly. And it will remove a great deal of the bituminous, which is pavement, and it will minimize the environmental footprint on the airfield. This is one of the alternatives that the airport is looking at. So this is one of the things that we're looking at. The airport does need, and one of their shortfalls is hangars. They have a very strong need for aircraft hangar owners or aircraft owners to house their airplanes. They want a place to put them, and those are hangars. And so we're looking at the current footprint, not expanding like other airports. I'm personally working with other airports to expand their aprons. They have more than enough apron here. We're not looking to expand. They just want to build some more hangars on their current footprint right in here. The footprint's already there. No expansions. They're just going to build on their current footprint. It'd be kind of like you wanting to build a garage on your own land. Just want to put a garage on their own land is all it is. So that's what they're looking at. Other things that they're kind of looking at, frankly, we found that they're maybe spending a little bit too much money on their markings on the runway. Every time they mark it, they don't need to put these markings on here. They can dumb this down a little bit. I mean, that's minutia. We found it. Saves them a little money every time when they put paint down. These are little things that we're working with them on. So this is the existing conditions of the airport. And, some other things that we found, just to roll through them with you. As we came in with our drone, we did an obstruction analysis to see. And just so you know, the airport did a great job acquiring parcels, and the Navy did over the years. These parcels are owned. But there's some obstructions that are starting to come up into the approach surface. So over the next couple of years, the airport may need to go over and just start topping some trees or starting to do some maintenance of trees. This is not construction. It's just, hey, I got a tree that's starting to come into the approach surface. They might need to just remove some trees. And this is just within the confines of their easements that are already in place. Fortunately, the other end of the runway, there really wasn't any issues, and so not an issue. Okay. Let me talk about the forecast. This is the actual forecast we submitted to the FAA. And because the reason I want to put it up is the FAA really is looking for 2 things. They focus on based aircraft and the amount of operations. That's how they fund airports. They want to know the type aircraft you're using, and are you downsizing? In other words, are the number of operations in the aircraft, are you going into a recession, or are you on an increase? Well, what we found was, and by the way, this aircraft happens to be the type of aircraft that has a long-term lease at the airport. It's a Boeing 737. That's what Stratton flies, and it's a long-term lease at Brunswick. And we found that it's a very moderate increase, and it's about a 13% increase in the based aircraft at the airfield over the next 20 years. You could divide 13 by 20. I think that's about, 0.65 aircraft a year over the next 20 years. So a little less than 1 aircraft a year per year for the next 20 years. And then the operations go up at about 8% over the next 20 years, the operations. So in summary, what you're looking at is a few more aircraft over the next 20 years, maybe 1 a year, and then you're looking at operations increasing at a very low rate. So what you're seeing and hearing at the airfield is probably what you're going to see and hear in about 20 years. And that's the forecast that we're hearing and that we've seen now. And the FAA is looking at it very, very deeply, I should say, with a fine-tooth comb. And we should have an answer from them in the next couple weeks. some of the facility shortfalls that we saw. Facilities are broken into two sections, and I think I'm down to 2 slides, folks, so thanks for your patience. There's airside, and then there's landside. Okay, so the landside for us is kind of like, on one side of the fence and then over on the airport side. So on the airside, well, actually, I'll just talk loud. So on the air side, I mean, obviously we've got hangars, and when we say PFAS mitigation means we just won't allow any new hangars come in. Most likely what we're finding is the waiting list is for small hangars anyway, so they would be small enough, fire suppression wouldn't even be needed. So, and if a hangar that was larger would come in, once again, the airport would not allow a builder to come forward with a plan set, and MIRA just would not authorize a builder or approve a plan set with some form of fire suppression system that just has PFAS or AFFF, period. That's it. End of story. So hangars are a shortfall. The main runway has not been rehabilitated in a very, very long time, and it needs to be rehabilitated, not reconstructed. We were able to catch it, I believe, in a time frame where a rehabilitation is a much less expensive endeavor than a reconstruction. A reconstruction is when you pull the whole thing out of the ground. In this latitude of the United States, it's going down below the frost level, which is 52 inches here. So you're pulling the whole thing out of the ground and you're rebuilding the whole thing up. That's a lot of money. We feel we can rehabilitate it, which is just pulling the top course off. The ends of these runways are concrete, so those don't need to go anywhere, but you're pulling the top course off, maybe tightening up a few things in a few areas, and then just putting a brand new top course down, and then remarking the thing. So a lot less than a reconstruction. So runway rehabilitation. The pavement width adjustments, there are some areas around the airport. We're going to, in the master plan, on the airport layout plan, we are going to outline every inch of pavement that is not needed at the airport, period. And then we're also going to, in a table, calculate how many square feet of pavement can be released and removed from the airport. Now, it needs to be funded to be removed, and it can be removed over time, but by way of example, that one runway that we talked about would be 1.3 million square feet of pavement could be removed with that one alternative. Just that one runway, 1.3 million square feet. So we're going to go in there. If I just back up for just a second by way of example, just so everybody knows, we're looking at it with a fine-tooth comb. There are little things like these little pockets that are here everywhere. There's just little things. There's these little things that are gone, that just are not needed. This thing right here, we're looking at it with a fine-tooth comb because we just want to minimize the amount of pavement, and they'll slowly but surely work at reducing and removing that pavement over time. So we'll reduce that. Pavement, taxiway widths, same thing. In some cases, they're wider than they need to be. Obstruction removal, we talked about. Perimeter fence, you can see the sign there. There is one part of a fence that's a little closer to the taxiway than it should be. At a project later on, at a rehab for one of the taxiways, the fence might be moved. Advanced air mobility infrastructure, we're going to look at some of the new technology that's coming up, and it's a shortfall at the airfield. Electric cars, electric aircraft, it's coming. And we want to make sure that the airport, with all that space, there's plenty of room for the change of not only from electric to electric aircraft, but there's also, by 2030, there's a mandate to go from leaded aircraft fuel to unleaded aircraft fuel. That's coming, and it's an EPA mandate by 2030. That's 5 years from now, and they're actually testing it right now. We're going to reserve a spot on the airfield. Right now, there's a low lead fuel, and it's safe, and it's been flying in airplanes for years. But there's a low lead fuel tank that the airport, that aviation has been using for decades. I mean, I've been flying for 40 years. I've been flying with low leaded fuel. But by 2030, it's got to be changed. We're going to reserve, just in case the mandate comes down and they say to the FBO, pull that thing out, they've got to have a place to put this new fuel. So we're going to reserve that spot on the airfield for them. Commercial space means space flight. The Maine Space Corporation was put in play quite a few years ago through Maine state legislation, and it is coming. There's a lot of activity in the background, and there's R&D facilities, neo satellites that are being researched and developed right at Brunswick right now. Up in Loring will be done. There's a lot of that going on, and we need to conserve space for that on the airfield. And then last but not least, and there's a lot of other things, we'll talk about landside in a second, but I started out when Ronald Reagan fired all the air traffic controllers back in 1982 in the PATCO strike. That's where I started in my aviation career. So air traffic control is near and dear to my heart. And the Maine University is working with Brunswick to use that old air traffic control tower as an air traffic control training school with the college, and to put in a training center for flight training and for air traffic control. That will be on the other side, and it's a reuse of the facility that, frankly, the taxpayers paid for back in the early 90s. It can be repurposed, and it will be repurposed. That's the plan. So that's the infrastructure that will be reused. On the land side that we have up here, there's some things like there's some airport signage we talked about. We did already talk about the releases and property releases to right-size the airfield, and then we also talked about electric charging, not only for aircraft but also for vehicles. We've already reserved those spots on the airfield. So, timeline. April 2025, that's today. We've developed the forecast. We've kind of developed the facility needs today. We're working, this is kind of our second public meeting. We've had one already. It wasn't as attended as it is today, but we did have a public meeting already, and I appreciate as many people are here now. But we're going to take the information that we got today from our TAC meeting, and we're going to start developing alternatives, so we're going to take all these ideas and put them actually onto drawings spatially to make sure it actually fits on the airport, which it will. And then, we'll schedule, and we're planning to have a third public meeting in June. That's what we want. We want to bring these drawings forward and just present them, show everybody. August is when we're planning to, in June, if there's not, we want feedback. If there's a bunch of feedback, we'll take a couple of months. We'll incorporate all that feedback in. And then our goal would be to come back with an airport layout plan and also a capital improvement plan with real-time estimates, today's dollars, to say, okay, if we did that, this is actually what it would cost. And that's what we do. We do what I call opinions of probable cost. I don't do cost estimating. I do opinions of probable cost. Keeps us out of the lawyer's hands, but that's what we do. So we'll do that in a capital improvement plan. We'll put together the final the master plan document. One thing I want to stress is the FAA does not approve a master plan. MIRA is the only one that adopts and approves a master plan. The town doesn't approve this master plan. It's MIRA that approves and adopts this master plan. So MIRA is the sponsor of the airport, and the FAA, frankly, I can tell you right now, I'm dealing with it right now at an airport. If I called the FAA wouldn't even talk to me. That's their edict right now. If the sponsor calls the FAA, they'll talk to them all day long. That's their new thing they're doing. So if the town called the FAA wouldn't talk to the town because the sponsor is MIRA. So they will not, they will only, MIRA can approve this master plan to adopt it. So I just want everybody to know that. But the final approval would be up to MIRA. So, with that, the implementation of the plan, frankly, after I made that point, I think maybe a little too strongly, but after the approval of the master plan by MIRA, they would implement the plan, and that's to be determined. So, sorry for the streaming at the bottom with the notes. Questions and comments, I'm going to hand it back over to Barry, but at the bottom, there is, for questions and comments, I do want to have that up, and I do mean it. We do respond to these. Send us your questions. We will categorize all the questions, and we will respond to them. This is not a dead-end email. we take them very seriously. We'll put them all, and what I do is I put them on a long sheet. Maybe it's a short sheet. Sometimes it is. We'll put all the questions on there, and we will put all the responses on there, and we'll post it up onto the Mira website so that everybody can see the questions and the answers. I think that's fair, and that's what we'll do. With that, Mr. Valentine, you go back to you.
Mr. Rule, thank you very much. Let me underscore something he just said, and that's that whatever comments, suggestions, questions you have today will actually become part of our deliberative process with Du Bois and King and our committee in developing the master plan as it goes forward. So you are part of the master planning process here tonight. And with that, I will open it to public comment and questions again. Please try to keep it to about 3 minutes, given the number of people here in the room. I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to get to the microphone. And with that, I open it to anyone who would like to come forward. Sir, go ahead.
My name is Ray Verco, and we live on the landing in a condo. And by the way, the presentations were very good this evening. I have a question and a concern. The future development of the base or the airfield, there is a potential company that's trying to establish a business. I think the name is Variety Energy, which is a company that processes sewage for energy. And I'd like to know if there's any discussion or any thoughts from what we've been presented with tonight, how that would affect us. Our concern is if this company goes forth on the base, it's going to alter the living of residential people in the condos and the people around the base. And we're very concerned about that. And it's been presented, and we don't know what the outcome will be. The decision will be made by the council. I'd like to have that addressed if we can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Oh, hey, I'm sorry, didn't see you over there.
Hello, my name is Ralph Keyes. I live near Brunswick Landing, a little to the south and west of the golf course. I'm active with Brunswick United for a Safe Environment, and I'm speaking tonight as a member of Brunswick United, but primarily as a Brunswick resident and a neighbor. Thank you for hosting this meeting and inviting public comment. I want to start by saying that I recently reached out to Mira to ask if I could meet with the new executive director, Stevenson, and he kindly hosted me last Wednesday. We had an amicable and friendly open meeting. He stated that he wished to be open to the community and available to listen and respond to our concerns, and I thank you for that. Last Tuesday morning, I happened to be driving across Brunswick Landing to attend a class that I helped teach at SMCC UMA campus, and out at the recently removed south gate by the south end of the runway, I saw 2 Clean Harbor trucks and several workers packing up their gear in the cold rain, and I wondered, is this something to do with the AFFF spill? By the time I returned home a little after noontime and looked at the Press Herald as I was eating my lunch, there was already a story in there about the fuel spill, the aviation fuel spill, the 55-gallon drum that was tipped over. And I commend Mr. Stevenson and Mira leadership for their prompt response to the spill and for their communication about the event. Thank you for that. I do, however, believe that this recent spill speaks to the need for Mira to slow down on new development. Please, you must do a thorough inventory of the myriad environmental threats that exist on the former BNAS site before we expand any services and facilities and possibly exacerbate these threats or create new ones. Many years ago, decades ago actually, before I became a career high school earth science, environmental science teacher, I worked for a local lumber yard, and I spent a lot of time driving a forklift. Now, experienced forklift drivers know how to get a balanced lift on a pallet, and I don't know the circumstances of that spill, but I wonder perhaps it was caused by failure of a pallet that had been sitting around for so long. We need a complete inventory of all that stuff so we don't have more of this stuff and create problems in the future. This is the sort of thing that must be addressed. We deserve a complete assessment of all the existing and potential environmental threats that exist on Brunswick Landing before Mira undertakes any new development. It is the least you can do for your off-campus neighbors, especially for the many residents, business employees, business patrons, daycare attendees and their parents, college students, and rec center users who you have recruited to live on, work on, study on, and visit Brunswick Landing. Please slow down, assess the threats, and continuing to engage the community in this process. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry, you're all lining up over there. I'll have to turn around.
First of all, thank you for this meeting, and thanks for the opportunity to both hear and absorb information. There's a lot to consider. My name is Sandy Stott. I live at 4 Braemar Road, and I serve the town as chair of the Conservation Commission and chair of the steering committee charged with implementing the plan to improve Mere Brook from its urban impaired status to Class B water. I also write a column for the Times Record called Your Land. It's about public lands, and I've done so for the last 7 years. In that column, I've written often about Mere Brook and its watershed. Both are central to the town. My work in town has led me to read a lot of Navy, EPA, and Maine DEP reports about the landing. I know enough to know how complex the environment of the landing is. Take, for example, its stormwater system, 80% of which drains into Mere Brook and then Harpswell Cove. Recently, the 3 ponds that form part of that system, ponds A and B and Picnic Pond, whose sediments had been deemed too toxic for human touch, received attention. A $5 million project removed and disposed of the layer of toxic sediment and replaced it with a layer of clean sand. Not long after that, the August FFF foam spill occurred. You can guess where a good percentage of the 50,000 gallons of foam and water comprising the spill went. Into the stormwater system, and so onto the newly cleaned sediment. My point with this single example, and I could cite a number of others, is to underline the need for the town council and our legislators to fashion a way to oversee the health of the landing and its waters. MIRA is a real estate development group. They do that work well. But the record is also clear that they do not manage the health and waters of the landing well. They need oversight and help. And here's a final thought. I offer these thoughts also for our neighbor Harpswell, into whose cove and waters much of the landings and Mere Brook's waters flow. What we keep sending them is not very neighborly. Thanks.
Mask. Necessary evil. I'm Amy Self, Coombs Road. First of all, I want to thank Mira for holding this public meeting regarding the airport master plan. The presentation was well prepared, showcasing marketing skills and a focus on real estate development. While the future-focused approach is commendable, it is crucial to address the current reality in Brunswick. The development is managed by a real estate entity with no experience handling the complexities of the former Naval Air Station Superfund CERCLA site. No understanding of the groundwater flow or hydrology, decades of hazardous chemical dumping, and PFAS contamination levels unprecedented in our state. The airport is a Superfund CERCLA site with significant groundwater contamination. Recent findings indicate substantial PFAS contamination, including the destruction of private wells. Private wells and PFAS levels exceeding 30 parts per trillion in the golf course well and potentially private property near the golf course. PFAS concentrations can reemerge from surfaces like asphalt, concrete, and stainless steel. Continuing exposure for those working on or in Hangar 4 and Tech Place. This is called rebounding. It was referred to in the presentation, and Mira is in receipt of the letter referencing this known phenomenon. PFAS is forever. Contamination is forever. Mira's 2009 master plan summary did not identify significant environmental issues from the airport's transition from a Navy operation to a civilian one. However, in 2025, the master plan has negatively impacted various environmental factors, including air quality, coastal resources, land use, noise levels, private property, farmlands, fish, wildlife, plants, floodplains, increased hazardous materials dumped into the environment, water quality, and wetlands. It is unclear how Mira arrived at the conclusion the community of Brunswick was in favor of keeping the airport and developing it. Mira's airport feasibility study report from June 2024 refers to a survey conducted to estimate demand for the airport. The sample size was 25 people, which is not statistically significant for Brunswick population of over 22,000. The sample size is 0.001% of the population of Brunswick. This is not a true picture. Mira needs to address the environmental issues that have accumulated over the past 16 years before considering any future development of the airport. I've spoken to many members of the community and impacted citizens and urge Mira to prioritize the creation and implementation of a comprehensive PFAS remediation and compensation plan, not a development plan, in partnership with and collaboration with relevant stakeholders, included but not limited to the Navy, EPA, DEP, Brunswick Town Council, Town Manager, Governor's Office, federal and state legislators, BACSI, RAB, and members of the community. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Robert McEwen. I live on Princess Point Road. My house is 3 miles due south of here and right on the flight approach from the south for aircraft. And I can say that my feelings tonight are more of a personal issue because of my locale. My property fronts on Harpswell Cove. My neighbors and I used to swim in that cove. Our grandchildren used to swim in that cove. All of that had to end last summer because of the spill. And as far as I know, it isn't safe yet to be able to go in that water. And I probably never will go in again. So, like I said, this is personal. And kind of to get ready for today, well, first, let me ask you a few questions. I want to ask a couple of questions on record. Mr. Levesque stated that they are removing the AFFF from Hangar 6, and eventually 5 will have that too. Where did you remove that AFFF? Where did it go? Is it in containers on the base? Was it shipped away someplace? I'd like to know where that material went and where any of it in the future is going to go. Second of all, I did spend some time reviewing the Chapter 2 of the plan on the web. I don't know how current that is. Well, I do know. It's dated March 2024. And so I'm sure things have changed, but here's a couple of things that I see need explaining. First of all is under support facilities. It says there's no aircraft rescue and firefighting service required at BMX. Brunswick Fire Department will supply the services needed. I want to know how the town is compensated for that service. Sounds like pretty expensive. I know when the spill happened on August 19th, I don't think anybody even knew how to handle a spilled AFFF until the fire department showed up. Second of all, the plan states that the anaerobic digester and a biogas generator are currently supplying 33% of the electricity required by Brunswick Landing. As far as I know, the digester was shut down almost a year ago. Second, it also states that Verity Energy plans to convert the facility to a plant producing renewable natural gas as soon as 2026. And to my knowledge, Verity has not even filed any contract permits at this time. And when Verity had their workshop here, they stated that they were going to have to import sludge contaminated with PFAS from out of state to the base to meet their quota to be profitable. And then the environmental overview, there's no mention of PFAS in it at all. There's nothing. They talk about things like all the circular remedies for pollution have been implemented, so there's no problem with any pollution. This does not really build my confidence that, MIRA and the master plan are going to address these environmental issues, which are very important to every resident in this town. Let's see. Yeah, it talks about complying with shoreline zoning and regulations, but there's no mention of the pollution that's being spewed through the picnic ponds out to Mare Brook and into Harpswell Cove, and then on to Harpswell and into Casco Bay. Let's see.
Sir, you're getting close to your time.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
My name is Bruce Cantner. I'm a Brunswick resident. The base is an endlessly fascinating situation. It is big, complex. I think some of us who came this evening not quite sure what we'd hear can feel that again just in this really quite remarkable presentation on the details, the nitty-gritty details of this master plan. Very hard to take and assimilate. I think we cannot forget for one moment that this is an interconnected issue. We can't just look at the airport alone. We've heard that this afternoon, and I appreciate MIRA's conscientious efforts to look at all of these aspects, to update it. But it doesn't stand there alone. We heard about environmental issues a little bit today, but let me tell you, I have spent countless hours the last 5 or 6 days studying thousands of documents that are in the archives of the library over there, Curtis Library of the Navy, from 1983 right until the present. And I read quite a different story. I think it's objective. I'm reading the documents from what we heard the introduction from Mr. Levesque. I don't want to take the time. I can't. This is for MIRA's benefit to inform the public. But let me say, there is a whole different story that we know because we were suddenly surprised and just speechless at the spill on last August. And this has sparked many of us. I've been involved with citizens. I've been part of forming a new group, the Brunswick United for a Safe Environment. And I also have to say that this is such a complex process. We need a restructuring of how this base has been managed for the last whatever years now, 17, 18 years since Mira was there. I can tell you to go right back to look at the reuse master plan, and you'll see that the decision to have an airport was not made by the public. It was made by the Proto-Mira group. I'm forgetting the name of it right now. It is the Brunswick Local Redevelopment Authority. They commissioned the study, and it became Mira. So I want to just right now ask if we could respectfully have a show of hands of people who are present who are not so favorable, let's say not in favor of this expansion. Let me be clear, there is an expansion, even on words. When you add $6.5 million customs facility to your capital improvement plan, it's a little disconcerting to see myself on that screen, I'm sorry. And you add $2 million for a new hangar. That's expansion. It's expansion of infrastructure. We've been told it won't be expansion of planes coming in, and that's reassuring. So I'd just like to see a quick show of hands, and if we could just go down the line and maybe count off how many people are not in favor of expanding the airport for the customs facility at this time. Just raise your hands. I don't think we can count real quickly, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh my gosh, can somebody help me count?
1,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Keep going. 8, 9, you're 10. The key's 10. 12,
13, 14.
21, 22, 23, 24. I think we got you. 25, 26. So maybe close to 30?
Yeah, at least close to 30. A few more
There
here.
might be people online.
And there might be people. So I'm just going to leave it there. I want to close with one little quick reading here. It's easier. You can see I'm a little bit flustered tonight because this is such a complex issue. Once again, you know, what we heard was useful, but boy, how do you deal with that? Where is the public input in this? How are you going to input on whether you want the apron to be built on or not? So Mira was never properly conceived or set up to deal with the huge list of environmental issues from 68 years of being a naval base. The Reuse Master Plan Design Group held 16 months of public workshops, surveys, and events to establish a broad, inclusive, foundational picture of what citizens and town officials wanted for replacing the huge naval base on its 3,300 acres. The information...
Sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, please allow other people to have time to speak.
Okay. I'm just going to say the information gathered was structured so all participants could give their input, and it was the Proto-Mira group that interpreted the findings from these 16 months in favor of 2 airport-based plans. The whole structure of this thing was set up with an airport and without an airport, and people got to answer the questions on both scenarios.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Just note that the public input has to go forward here. This is not sufficient tonight.
I'm David Page. I'm the Town of Brunswick representative to the Restoration Advisory Board, and on the Secretary of Brunswick Area Citizens for a Safe Environment, and for my sins, retired Bowdoin College chemistry professor. My comment is everything I think that needs to be said has been said, and I want to make a different comment, and that is that on the base, all of the groundwater now is the Navy's responsibility, and it provides oversight, and it is now designated by EPA as operable Unit 13, and so it basically it's all regulated as a unit. Since April of 2024, PFAS and PFOA were put on the Superfund list, finally, after many years of trying. And that means that the Navy, in the BRAC process, now can seek to remediate that material in the groundwater, whereas they were, by law not able to do so before because the PFAS and PFOA were not on the Superfund list. And so now the Navy has sort of turned back the clock on the BRAC process for PFAS and are engaged in a remedial investigation, or RI, as it's called, for PFAS and PFOA. And this means that this will be a multi-year process. It's really in its initial stages and will probably go on for some time. And so my question to Mira really is, given the pervasive kind of deposits of PFAS around the perimeter of the base at locations that the Navy has not yet even identified at the base, will the airport expansion construction steps run afoul of the RI process? In other words, will the Navy, consent to let some of the steps that you have outlined here tonight, proceed until they go through their due diligence with the new RI? And that's my comment.
Hi, my name is Leah Carnevale, and I live on Jordan Avenue. I have one question, which is that the changes in the EPA, I guess I'll just read this, that on March 12th it was announced, that March 12th was the most consequential day of deregulation in American history. So I guess I'm just wondering, the things that we're talking about tonight, like, for example, guaranteeing no PFAS and other toxins that are on lists right now, if those become approved and if the regulation makes those no longer dangerous officially, but does that change any terms that are discussed here about this? Or are those contracts, like, would those hold steady regardless? And I don't know if that's already been answered, but that's my question.
I'm Jeannie Johnson, and I'm perplexed. I'd like to know when Mira is planning on leaving Brunswick. I mean, is there a finite date when we're going to be done with Mira's redevelopment? And economic drivers and economic development, drive around this town and see what economic development has brought to Brunswick. It's a traffic hellhole. Cook's Corner is a traffic nightmare. And they're bringing more of that. So I think we have to ask, does Brunswick even need an airport? What's it going to bring Brunswick? What benefit is it to the citizens of Brunswick? And shouldn't we get to vote on this? Why is Mira making the sole decision on whether this airport is whatever they're going to do? It's an economic disaster. This town has become an economic nightmare when you look at the traffic. We got real problems. We can't even maintain the roads in this town, and yet we're bringing in more development and more congestion and more people who are going to be traveling to who knows where for jobs because they're not going to find them on the base. So when is Mira going to be done with us, and when can we make our own decisions about the base or the landing or whatever you want to call it, that place over there that's overly developed already? Thank you.
Good evening, Sean Hogan, Brunswick resident. My biggest issue is I have a really hard time trusting Mara. Mara has broken faith with us so many times, and of course we have the whole PFAS spill this last year, but I don't know, I have a hard time trusting where their focus is. I've been talking for years about safety on the base and building out responsibly. Mara can't do something as simple as replace a stolen stop sign. The corner of Pegasus and Admiral Fitch, that stop sign's been missing for 4 years, and I've repeatedly asked that they replace it. I can go on Amazon for $40 and get a stop sign, but Mara can't even seem to manage that. I look at this $6.4 million in funding for a proposed customs facility. I used to be in charge of the K-9 unit on the Navy base, and one of the things that we did was we searched people's baggage when they came off of airplanes, and I did that job overseas, and I would search bags, I would search airplanes, I would search vehicles. I would do a lot of the same tasks that a customs enforcement person would do, and I did it all out of an office inside of a 20-foot Connex box. And I actually went online to see what a 20-foot Connex box would cost. And I was actually surprised how cheap they are. Brand new, you can get one for $4,000. But the one that I worked out of was retrofitted to have a desk and a computer and an air conditioner and some other amenities. So let's just say that we got the nicest Connex box you could possibly get. Maybe we spent $50,000 on it. I can't see how what $6.4 million is going to go into. So when you tell me you're only going to have a limited number of people coming in that are going to be used by this customs facility, I really have a hard time believing that when you can have a space for a customs officer and maybe a customs dog or whatever other things that a customs person needs for a whole lot less money. I'll just wrap it up in summary. I can't trust Mayor. I can't trust what they say. And I would hope that everybody would be very skeptical of anything that they tell you. Thank you.
My name is Joe Soraka, and I live in Brunswick, Maine. It's easy to internalize numbers, the concept of profits. We're a capitalistic society. We make stuff to sell stuff for profits. We import stuff for profits. We do all this stuff for profits. 2 and 2 is 6. It's easy to jump onto the math of a society and base all life around this math, as if that's the only thing there is. And perhaps we don't question other areas of thought that we should question. In fact, we should have been questioned by the time we entered elementary school, but our culture sort of orients us to a certain type of thinking, a standardization of thought and behavior. They call it education. It's an indoctrination system that we applaud and we love. I love the headlines these days about Harvard getting money withdrawn because of various political ideologies and beliefs and all this crap that happens in an insane society such as America. So when I look at Brunswick, any area in Brunswick, when I look at Cook's Corner, which in my opinion is a disgrace, it's an absolute disgrace. 5 lanes of traffic with a health care facilities next to a railroad track at an intersection. If there was a health emergency, nobody would be able to access this health profession place, health for profit, good health for profit. We don't care about your health. We care about profits. And take our medications, for Christ's sakes, because it's very profitable for us. We don't care if you live or die. I think what I would have liked to have seen when the Navy left here, and they haven't left. By the way, I was in a Navy aviation squadron from 1967 to 1971. And I don't say that proudly, because it was a bad clown show, in my opinion. However, I would have liked to seen the Navy leave Brunswick as it once was. Beautiful farms and blueberry fields that would have produced something that we could have ingested without worrying about dying, providing it was an organic farm, providing they didn't use toxic pesticides and toxic herbicides. People use these things because they don't know anything. They don't know any better. They see an ad say, use this. Monsanto makes lots of profit off of glyphosate and their geoengineered foods, genetically modified foods. Like, we're supposed to applaud Monsanto. Bear with me. You'll love it. So that's all I have to say. I would have liked to seen Navy leave this base as farms and blueberry fields. And I know everybody that's put so much energy into this project and into math and into the subject of profits and losses will think I'm a lunatic. And actually, I am a lunatic because I don't subscribe to popular beliefs about any subject.
Sir, if you'd kind of run against your time if other people have an opportunity.
Thank you for thinking.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. Marcia Harrington. I hadn't planned to talk tonight. So I'm a grandmother, and I have two grandchildren, ages 1 year and 3 years, that are at Pettingill Academy, which is a daycare not 3 blocks from Hangar 4. And I'm listening to the presentation tonight. I have to say, it was very nice. I appreciated it. Didn't seem like a lot of overreach. It seemed well thought out. But it occurs to me there's a huge breach of trust here. I'm trying to figure out why I would trust Mira when you really haven't made people whole from the PFAS spill. So many people are worried about their well water. We're to the west. No one's paying for us to test our well water, and it's $350 a shot. Who's reimbursing the gentleman who can't swim anymore in Harpswell Sound with his grandchild? So I guess before I feel like I would want to approve your plans, I would want to see a show of good faith that you've dealt with the problems that have been caused in the past. And if my grandsons develop cancer in 20 years, where will you all be?
Good evening. My name is Noah Oppenheim. I am a resident of Brunswick. I'll keep my comments brief, addressing the master plan update. Very reassuring to hear multiple times tonight that Mira does not intend to expand commercial passenger or cargo air service. I strongly encourage you to maintain those priorities, but not just through omission in the master plan update. Chapters 1 and 2 don't include any explicit indication that that is the intent of the management of this facility. So not omission, but affirmation that this is the priority, explicitly in the following chapters that you'll be developing, as well as I'd encourage you to reframe those same affirmative objectives in a new version of the first chapter for 2025. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Sandy Uptigrath. I live in Brunswick, and I am the chair of the Brunswick Town Council. Unlike some of the former speakers, I will tell you my history with Mira is a little different. On August 20th of last year, I didn't trust Mira at all. I have learned that they are all trying very hard to demonstrate good faith, be open, provide information. Now, we may disagree with some of that, but they are collaborating in very good faith with the town to make sure that people who have been harmed are listened to, are made whole to the extent that we can do that. They are working with the Navy, the EPA, the FAA, the DOD, all of the alphabet soup to try to recover as much as they can to help local people. My one disappointment tonight really was that I was led to believe that we would have questions and answers. And I would like to know from the board chair sitting here and the executive director how some of these questions and issues will be responded to.
Sure. Thank you. I'm Dan Stevenson. I'm the new executive director.
She's the last.
I couldn't hear you at all. My name is Dan Stevenson. Can you hear me now? Thank you. Sure. As Barry had stated at the very beginning of this meeting, is that one of the things we wanted to do when it comes to comments is to give everyone the opportunity to 3 minutes-ish to have your comments, which was done tonight. At the same time, in order to get accurate information to the questions, to get to you, they're going to get posted, as was stated earlier, so the public will get that, as well as everyone in this room will get those answers. Some of it may take a little bit of research. We want to be able to get those answers accurate to you. I will assure you, since I've been on board for about 6 weeks, we've pushed out 4 notices with accurate information. What we're trying to do is stay on target with being transparent, with being collaborative. I've met with many of you in this room today in a very short time that I've been here. We're going to continue building that trust moving forward. We need a starting point. One of the things, we know it gets late in the evening, people get tired, but we also want to make sure that those questions get answered, and they will, in a timely manner. That's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe we have some people on Zoom. I'm sorry, I thought you were.
If I may, just,
No,
I don't
please,
know
I'm
if
sorry.
I have any time left, but I'll be brief. I will submit some of my specific questions on the website, and thank you very much. I encourage all of you to do that. I do think that some of the things that we really want to know are, when are we going to get final reports on the root cause analysis and other issues? I know you're working on them, but we want to know some idea of a time frame. And how will the public be engaged before August of this year to allow for public input? I think this has been an extraordinary meeting. I think we have a long way to go, but I do thank and congratulate Mira for making a really strong effort toward that end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Shall I interrupt for Zoom?
Yeah.
Ma'am, could you mind if I let some of the people on Zoom have an opportunity? Then you'll have a chance. I'm sorry.
I would just ask if there's anybody on Zoom.
Is there anybody on Zoom? He's shaking, he's nodding yes.
Okay,
So-
Dan Ainsley, please raise his hand.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes. Hear you and see you.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for not being there in person. I don't have a babysitter tonight, but I'm thankful to have been walked through that master plan for the first time. I'm thankful to hear everyone's comments. I will say one thing I'm sensing in the room is not just that people are worried about trust and people are worried about being made whole, but also the sense of all the way up to now having felt disenfranchised as to having a say in what happens in this part of Brunswick and why is this part of Brunswick different from the rest of Brunswick at this point in time with the base now closed. We did just have Senator Daughtry and I have a bill come out, LD 1637, I think it is. It's a first draft, but it is branded as the MIRA reform bill. And I think one of the core components of it is about how the board is chosen. And that particular component is meant to have more of Brunswick's influence, to increase the influence of both the town of Brunswick and the town council of Brunswick, and just generally have more of us citizens in the room for decision making, observation and participation. And so just hoping to encourage people to read up on that. Obviously, this is just a first draft of a bill, but I think to help build trust, it would be great to collaborate on this bill with both Brunswick residents and with MIRA, so that we can look at this plan through the lens of Brunswick residents having more of a say in what they are, what will happen on this property in the next several decades. And that's all I wanted to say, and I wanted to thank you all for such a thoughtful discussion.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom? Okay. Where was somebody? Sure.
Good evening, everybody. I know a lot of the people in the room. We're all in this together. I'm Poppy Arford. I'm really here tonight. I am one of your state legislators. I represent State House District 101, which is just to the west of us here in Brunswick. I applaud all the work that Representative Ankeles has done as the actual representative of the landing area, along with all of our collective state Senator Maddie Daughtry. They care profoundly and about what happens next, and we are all working together in Augusta. But I'm not here tonight to talk to you as your legislator. I'm here tonight to talk to you as your neighbor, because the truth of the matter is we are all in this together. If you live on the landing, or if you live in Mare Brook area or in Harpswell Cove and you've been directly impacted, we all need to be in this together and caring about that. And I know that I'm in this for the long haul, because it will take a long time. The environmental impact is, for me, the most important thing, and it's so far transcends any other interest. Because guess what? All of us are going to be gone. I'm going to be I just turned 70 years old. 20 years, I may be gone, but my grandchildren, some of them are still going to be living here in Brunswick, and we have to clean this up for them. This area has to be cleaned up. So my question by the way, I also want to echo what Council Chair Updegraff said about how things are different now. I myself have been contacted by Executive Director Stevenson. We have not yet met, no fault of his. It's really more my fault because I've been in Augusta. But there's a tone change. There's a welcoming of us into the game that I did not sense before. And I want you to know how profoundly appreciative I am of that. And so I think trust is slowly but surely being rebuilt. But the most important thing I wanted to say, and the question I have is, what is being done in all of this analysis and all of this looking into things and hiring experts to determine what the risk is to our environment with whatever we do next? And the leveling of that risk. What I would like to see is, depending on what happens next with Mira, including with some sort of an airport, what is the environmental risk to not just the landing area, but our entire region? And I would like to see that laid out in black and white so that we can discuss it as a community. For instance, I know, because I do a lot of research and I have access to information, that right now, for jet fuel, there's no such thing as a pure firefighting chemical. Even the most modern chemicals that they've evolved that are way past the firefighting foam, the legacy foam that has caused so much damage here in our community. But even these newer renditions, they still have risk. These are chemicals that are literally designed to smother fires that result from jet fuel. And so there is still some chemical action. I would like to see, if we are seriously talking about any sort of bringing bigger planes into Brunswick, or any more planes into Brunswick, what will be our firefighting mechanism? I mean, we need to see the actual products that are going to be used. To simply say the products will not be the legacy foam, and so therefore it's not going to be a risk. It's not that I'm concerned that anybody is intentionally attempting to mislead us. It's just that I don't know what you're talking about. I'd like to see the name of the products. I'd like to be able to research them myself, and my guess is that everybody in this room would like to do that as well. So what I'm going to ask for, my question is, as we go forward, that the environment be put front and center, and whatever risk that we are being asked to continue to bear as a community as we continue to evolve this landing region of our community, that we be fully informed with information and with conversations and with our voices being respected. And I really do truly respect what you're doing tonight, what you've given us for information, and what I truly believe that we will be partners. Our partnership will grow and evolve going forward. So thank you.
I would just like to say quickly, anybody that has questions on the airport, I'm going to be hanging around. Feel free to come ask me. I'll answer whatever I can. As far as the other issues, I'm not really privy to all the goings-on of that, but I will be hanging around and can answer some of your questions. And one I would like to answer for you, the products that we don't want any products on the base. The new systems are actually a water system with a grate in the floor that removes the fuel away if there was a fuel spill, which is the potential for the fire. So there is no extra chemicals. It's all water-based from here on out at the landing on the airport.
Hi, everyone. Jamie Ecker, Council District 2. My district includes the airport as part of it. I'm not speaking on behalf of the council. I'm speaking on my own here tonight, but I'm encouraged by a lot of the stuff I heard tonight. The guiding principles, the alternatives, the reduction in runway and paved area out there, the public engagement plans. There's some really new stuff I've heard tonight, which is really encouraging. I think one of the biggest things is this is a far cry from where this master plan started a year ago, when it was like one public meeting and we're done. So it's clear to me that the organization is trying to change. It's great. But I have two sets of questions. One is around environmental sustainability initiatives that were talked about tonight, and restoration initiatives, stormwater upgrades. There's some serious, as I know the Mira folks know, serious environmental upgrades that need to be done there. And the capital plan that the council saw last fall had almost nothing, tens of millions of dollars in airport improvements, and almost nothing for those kinds of restoration efforts. So as you're doing this this planning effort, I'm going to be looking for that financial plan and seeing where those items come into the plan and how they're going to be funded, because that was missing before last year. The second set of questions I bring up is about the it's a matter of priorities. When I raise my hand saying I'm not in favor of expansion, it's not so much some of the stuff that might be done out there, it's the matter of what the priorities have been out there. And so when I see things like the new customs facility or new hangars, I'm thinking, well, why isn't this money going to clean up or address some of these problems that are out there already? And the customs facility, I don't know how many people have seen the feasibility report that just came out last June, but it's pretty eye-opening in many ways, because I think it's, to me, it's it doesn't seem feasible. In there, it got earmarked at $6.4 million. Now the estimate is up to over $9 million in that report. And this is all for, at a stretch, the consultant's stretching 145 operations a year. So you have less than 3 flights a week, an average of less than 3 passengers a week, and we're going to spend $9 million to have that, when you can go to Bangor, you can go to Portland a half hour away, you can go other places, and it just doesn't square in my mind as a priority for the landing. When I look at it also, I think, you know, the break even on this was $300,000 a year in revenue. So spending $9 million to get $300,000 in revenue, that in anyone's economic justification does not make any sense. So again, I'm kind of thinking of this as like indicative of, this was kind of where the old Mira would go. Where will the new Mira go? Is this really a priority relative to the other things that are the needs out there? That's the kind of thinking I'd like. As a counselor told me when I joined the council, you got to be willing to change your mind. And maybe Mira might want to think about changing their mind on this one. So thank you.
I think it's after 9 o'clock now, unless there's someone who feels that they do have something they'd like to add. I would like to thank all of you for coming. I think, as you've heard from our consultants and from our executive director and others, the whole purpose of this meeting was to have public input to the airport master planning for Brunswick Airport, so that your concerns and your interests are reflected in where we go with the airport. So again, thank you all for coming, for taking the time, for what you've had to offer tonight, and we will have answers for you. Again, thank you very much. Much appreciated.